and see if we've got that line up and running. The issues with tech. Morning to you, Danny. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
You're causing a real headache for the PM, aren't you?
Well, that's not the intention. This is the parliamentary process. I mean, the first thing to say is the bill is actually a very good one, and we really welcome the steps the government's taken. The legislation that was in place before, sadly, wasn't strong enough to withstand the assaults on it from the legal profession, and this bill is a lot better. We're disapplying much of the European human rights framework that meant that the flights to Rwanda haven't taken off so far. And speeding up the process. So it is a very good bill, and there's now this treaty in place with Rwanda, which should set people's mind at rest as well. So that's the first thing. But yes, we do think there needs to be some tightening, and the government has said that it's prepared to listen to suggestions for that. So last night, a group of us tabled some amendments that we think will add to the protections that the policy needs to ensure that parts of the Human Rights Act, which would currently allow the courts to stop the policy, should be disapplied in our view, and we want to restrict further the opportunity for vexatious lawyers to make spurious claims on behalf of illegal migrants before they can be removed. We do have to have absolute protections for human rights. Please understand that, and our legal system does allow that. The problem is there are too many loopholes in the current law, which have meant that we can't defend our borders by insisting that anybody who arrives here illegally is swiftly detained and removed.
My question, if you are successful in beefing up this legislation with these amendments, do you genuinely think you will be any closer to seeing planes to Rwanda take off? Because presumably these changes will just simply be voted down in the Lords.
Well, the Lords is going to be a battle. I mean, I really recognise, and as Charlie Rowley was just saying, there is a tough balancing act for the government here to get along. But our view is ultimately the Commons is paramount. If the government really wants to push this through, it can. I think the Lords should recognise if the clearly expressed will of the Commons wants to push this bill through, that they should concede. Ultimately, the public absolutely insist, and they're right to do so, that the government controls the borders of this country, that we as a nation can determine who arrives here. It is very wrong that we have a legal framework which allows people to arrive on our shores and to live here for life, which I'm afraid the current system does. So yes, there's some tough times ahead, I think, in Parliament, because we're going to have to push very hard to get this through the Lords if our amendments are accepted. That's the first battle, by the way. We've got the committee stage in the Commons next week, and our hope is that the government, which has been engaging constructively with us in this process, will accept the force of the arguments that we're making, which, by the way, are completely consistent with the bill as it currently stands. They're already disapplying parts of the Human Rights Act. They're already toughening up the current law quite significantly. We think we need to go just a little bit further on a couple of key points, and I hope the government will recognise the value of that.
Are you just wasting your time, Mr. Kruger, if you're pushing so hard, you get all this through, it all happens, and then there's a Labour government, and it all just gets cancelled out again? Because, I mean, you're on record as saying the Conservatives are going to be obliterated at the next election.
Well, we're going to be obliterated unless we convince the public we're governing with their interests and their values in mind, and that's why this bill matters so much. The public is overwhelmingly with us and not with Labour on this policy area, and this policy area is absolutely top priority for many of our target voters. So politically, it's really important that we get this right. I do fear for our fortunes at the election unless we convincingly demonstrate that we will stop the votes, doing whatever it takes, which is what the PM himself has said. So we're very supportive of his agenda and his mission there. And I think we can still hold on to power at the election if we show that we're on the side of the people, because Labour really clearly aren't, particularly on migration, where their policy is absolutely not existent.
But you are demonstrating the problem, I suppose, there in many ways, because it's the One Nation Tories who've come out and said actually compromise is in the national interest. Otherwise, you, the party of Conservatives, all disagreeing on this, are actually playing into the hands of Labour and handing them the keys to number 10.
Well, a divided party is not a good look. I fully recognise that. It is really important that we combine and come together as a party, but we need to come together in a place that the public supports, and a process of conversation, civil dialogue, which is what's going on, parliamentary debate, that's all very appropriate and acceptable in my view. But yes, fundamentally, we will need to compromise. We have compromised. I mean, most of us would like to leave the ECHR altogether. We recognise that isn't where the government is. It's not where the majority of Parliament is. So that's, as far as we're concerned, something we need to concede and fight another day. We're working constructively on the detail of this bill to improve the way it will work. And I hope that our colleagues on the One Nation wing of the party will recognise that and work constructively to get to a bill that we can all support.
OK, Danny Kruger, appreciate your time this morning.